I'm now joined by Jawed Ashraf, the former Indian ambassador to Paris till just 2 months back, somebody who knows that relationship between the two countries inside out. Thanks very much, sir, for being with us. How important is it for the Prime Minister and India to be a part of international negotiations in Paris, which effectively shape the face of AI and international regulation over it?
Well, I think it's an extremely important event, and I think we need to recognize that Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi has been invited to co-chair this AI Action Summit with President Emmanuel Macron. And it is important because, we, over a 75-year period, we have reached that pivotal moment in the evolution of AI, which is now permeating every aspect of our lives. It is going to affect everything from governance to polity to economics. It is going to shape competitiveness, power, prosperity, and in a sense, international relations also. So it's going to affect, citizens, societies, nations, the future of work or economy, national security and defense, and of course, as I mentioned, the very complexion of the international order. And therefore, at this point of time, you see there are multiple and sometimes competing initiatives to shape the future character of AI governance, of standards, norms, regulations, because AI, unlike some of the previous technological milestones in human history, is taking place simultaneously across the world, and its reach across the borders is seamless. It affects all of us, whether it originates in Silicon Valley or somewhere in Japan. Now, and therefore the need and the urgency to get everyone around the table to speak about, AI safety, AI governance, the rights of citizens, the way it's going to affect all of us is important. But also, I think there is another aspect which is going to be particularly important for India, but also for this particular summit, is because AI by its very nature is resource intensive. It requires high level of compute power, data quality, data sets, skills, financial resources. There is a great risk that in this race for AI, we may end up with concentration of power in the hands of few companies, few countries, and the others get bypassed. And therefore, you can have a more fragmented, more divided world. You can lead to a situation where, once again, you see, as we have seen in the past, power concentrated in the hands of few countries and the others left behind, particularly Global South. So that's one aspect of it. But the second is that we have to find ways to address their needs, build their trust, make this AI age an inclusive one. And this is where particularly India and France can play a role, because we are both governed by a great sense of strategic autonomy. We have very convergent views and philosophies on the shape of internet and how it's going to affect our society, and also use this opportunity to redirect our focus away from this great race on the power of AI systems to one in which we can develop use cases and models to solve some of the more intractable problems of the world and make a more equitable, more inclusive, more sustainable future for this world. There are a whole lot of problems that we can solve with the help of AI, but then it requires a lot of collective effort, as we have done sometimes in the past. So both in terms of regulation and in opportunities.
Well, some big news coming in now. The Prime Minister has landed in Paris, and we should be getting images of that. Ambassador Ashraf, jet engines is an important area. India needs jet engine collaboration. We want to try and build our own jet engines. For that, we need collaboration. The DRDO and Safran of France are looking to develop a fighter jet engine, but India is also looking at the United States and General Electric. It's a lot of money in all of this. Where does the French project stand?
See, this discussion has been going on for a long time. People can have different points of view. I have convinced that had we in 2016, for example, taken up the Safran offer for a complete design, development, industrialization, production, qualification, and certification, including teaching us on the software tools and advanced materials, which are particularly important for hot sections of the engine, we would have had an engine to power LCA today. I mean, I say this with a great sense of conviction. Some of those who were associated with it will bear me out, but for some reason, perhaps we felt that we were already invested in the design of LCA around G4404 and then subsequently 414. But and even today, what Safran is offering for future military jet engines includes 100% TOT in design development, again, as I said, all the way to certification with guarantees that they would on performance. What it does is that it gives you complete sovereign control of technology, the capacity to design engines yourself, the knowledge of metallurgy, as well as of the the complex processes of the hot section, which is the most difficult thing. And you can then do anything with it, like we have done when Safran and ISRO worked together for the Vikas engine in the 1970s, which was really not just a manufacturing TOT. A manufacturing TOT will only give you the capacity to put together things, but does not tell you how or why those things happen. And it creates a perpetual technology crutch. And
Right.
therefore, when we start looking at technology, we have to use this litmus test, not just simply the easy way out of manufacturing TOT. After all, we have manufactured TOT for Sukhoi engines and the Jaguar engines for the Rolls-Royce, but that didn't teach us much. So therefore, you need to get to a situation which Safran has offered, which is that you get into the basic design development, metallurgy, advanced materials, the hot section part of it, and all the way to certification, and that with complete sovereignty and ownership of the technology, the IP will be ours. And I think that's a great proposal, which will give us long-term, and DRDO and Safran are talking about it. I'm sure now I'm out of the government, I'm sure they continue to look at it seriously. It's a long-term project, but one I think critical for our future.
One of the deals that's essentially done, not signed as yet, is for 26 Rafales for the Indian Navy and 3 Scorpion submarines for also the Indian Navy. We've already built 6 of these French-designed submarines in Mazgaon docks. How important are these? And then there's the larger, of course, issue of 114 fighters for the Indian Air Force that India is also looking at. But again, the French connection important. Tell us why.
Well, I think, if I can be candid, and in part of that is our own, the rigor, if I could say, in a positive way, of our decision-making process. There are multiple issues, multiple stakeholders involved in this. But, it's an ongoing process. The process of negotiations for Rafale M is taking place. I'm sure it is going through its, prescribed procedure. We have our own specific requirements, and so therefore Dassault and in the Indian Navy would have negotiated some of those things now, and we're at a stage where perhaps as we can be going for our political level approvals, the official level approvals, and then they would sign the contract. But the important thing I'd like to point out to you, Vishnu, here is that we've known that we're going to have an aircraft carrier by a certain date, but we didn't act fast enough on our own to look at aircraft. So you actually have an aircraft carrier without aircraft, and this is not an issue that is at the political level. It's for Navy to introspect and for Ministry of Defense to introspect on why we reached the situation where you have an aircraft carrier but doesn't have aircraft to fly. But this is going to happen soon, I'm sure, and it is a great aircraft. With regard to the Scorpions, again, that's an ongoing process. This time, the order will be a repeat order on MDL. It's not going to be on the Naval Group. Naval Group will be a partner for MDL. And very interestingly, this time there is a clear prescription that there must be 65% indigenous content. And that's a huge thing because, a submarine involves hundreds of thousands of small parts, etc. When we reach that 65% indigenous content, we're also going to be in a position where we can, our naval industrialization process, our defense industrialization process will go forward. But more important, we will be in a position down the line to actually make submarines for other countries, because there are very few countries that can actually make conventional submarines in this part of the world. And this is where you will see the maximum demand for naval assets arising. So it's an important project in the evolution of India's capacity to deliver advanced naval systems, including submarines.
Both sides, Ambassador, have agreed to work on establishing a partnership on low and medium power modular reactors, also small modular reactors, advanced modular reactors. We've cooperated on the Jaitapur nuclear power plant. How is that also a key part of the strategic relationship?
I think the future of nuclear energy lies in both. I mean, there are advantages and disadvantages of both. Um, Large nuclear reactors are certainly going to be more efficient. In the long run, they will deliver power at a much lower cost. The initial just time and the cost required, capital cost required to set it up is quite high. The source of the power from where it arises is a huge one. And the small modular reactors are going to be more dispersed. I think we have to continue to look at both. There is a still, small modular reactors are yet to mature. I would say that, for example, France is continuing to do both. As you know, 70% of their power generation capacity today is from nuclear. Yeah. And they are, after a few decades, they are again going to start the process. And they are going to build 6 new reactors, and there are options for 8 more. So they have plans to build 14 of those EPR 1600 megawatt reactors, while they are continuing to pursue the SMRs as well, because I think both will serve different sets of needs. And in India's case, given the enormous requirement of baseload clean energy, particularly, and I'd like to point to you one very important point, that in the growth of energy demand for electricity globally is growing at twice the pace for any other energy sources. And it's and in the case of developing countries or global south, the rate of growth is 6 times higher. Mobility, data centers, electrification of villages, better consumption standards. You're going to need, you can't simply rely on renewable energy. So a combination of SMRs and large reactors are going to be the way forward. Important point here is that SMRs are yet to mature, but I think in the next 5 to 10 years, you're definitely going to see SMRs become. But you need to change your regulatory environment. Sure. You need to change your liability law. And we certainly need to look at the basic who can invest in nuclear power, because there is 2 different sides to it. One part is the nuclear fuel cycle, yep, and the other is the power generation. Yes. Can we find a regulatory framework where we allow private investment or foreign investment to come into power generation, while DAE and the regulatory bodies, sure, have a clear safeguards and oversight and ownership of the nuclear fuel cycle? I think that's eminently possible. I think with the new announcements that we have seen in the budget, both with regard to amending the Atomic Energy Act and the CLND, and the emphasis we have placed on nuclear energy, and I think it goes to the vision of our Prime Minister, who's very focused on this aspect of bringing in more nuclear power for a consistent, assured baseload clean energy supply in India, that you're going to see. I think this regulatory change, plus the fact that we are discussing very innovative sources of Jaitapur financing, yes, including the possibility of third country participation in some aspects and for financing, that I see that in the coming years, projects that have been, in a sense, moving very slowly for nearly a decade would certainly accelerate. So I see a great future in this.
All right, Ambassador, thank you very much for being with us.